Hi there, welcome to AVAX Wyckoff Technical Analysis session. And AVAX has gone through 2 consecutive weeks of red candles. However, this week's candle is just a red cross, meaning the bulls and the bears seems to be agreeing that the current price may be reasonable. It's sitting right above a key price level. So let's dive in to look at both the weekly and daily charts and see what the price actions are telling us. So just one quick thing about the Bollinger Band and Corner Squeeze, these purple and orange lines, we are still at the post-squeeze stage, meaning this price wing hasn't been over yet. So there may still be bigger swings to come. So last time when that happened, the swing lasted for 5 to 6 weeks. Currently, we are at around the 4th week mark. So it may not be over yet. And going back to the drawings and the Wyckoff stages, let me just clear the chat from the previous session just to make sure we have the correct chat. Okay, so since the squeeze force is still being released, we can turn off this indicator and focus back on the Wyckoff. Previously, we talked about this percentage that we potentially or even have entered the preliminary supply period, which I will keep this over here when we refer to what happened back in November last year. That's when we entered that same stage also. However, I'm still keeping this test 25% if the price really comes down, but then it's not as easy as it seems. So first, there are multiple barriers or support lines that the price has to break before it reaches this level. First is this yellow key level of $29.30. Then subsequently this upward trend line, this dashed line over here. And then eventually, obviously, the orange key level of $22.60 before it can come down to challenge the red key level. So that's multiple gates over there, and it doesn't seem like it can happen very quickly unless there's a black swan event. So the key is, now that it's continuing its trade along this uptrend, it's still going let me check the daily. We have a channel box, so that's good. We can go to the daily and talk about the channel box because it looks to me it's within an upward channel. Just to make sure I have things covered, so there are 2 time points over here. In case the price really comes down back below the yellow key level, but then rebound above this dashed trend line, this time point over here, somewhere around the 1st week of November, and breakout event will happen again. So we've got this breakout 2-3 weeks back, but if it really gets into this corner, it will be tested again whether the price will continue with this uptrend, or is it going to fall back to get a support from the orange key level, much like what happened over here on the left hand side during mid-July to end of August, and then rebound and form a new uptrend, then continuing to the buying climax. So that's the time point when we get to near the end of October and the 1st week of November. If it doesn't come down, if it really stay above the yellow key level but trade sideways, a lot of altcoins has been exhibiting this kind of behavior lately. Prolonged sideways movements for even over 10 weeks. For AVAX now, it's only sitting in this zone between the yellow and the green key levels only for 3 weeks. So there's still potential for it to continue all the way into November. When that happens, when we get deeper into November or even early mid-December, there's another time point here where this uptrend crosses the green key level. So when that happens, that's also another occasion where a breakout will happen, meaning a change of direction would happen during that time. So let me just quickly adjust this line so that it extends beyond this line. We can see it's somewhere near the end of December when this cross happens. So when this continues sideways without going up to the distribution higher distribution level, then this will eventually happen. But it's still over 2 months or close to 3 months from now. I doubt whether it would last that long. Not that it hasn't happened before. During this stage back in July all the way till first week of September, it was almost 2 months, so this can still happen. And then eventually when we get to this level above this white box, this long-term playground zone over here, so above this white box, what's important over here if we get to a distribution cycle? Let me extend this line as well. The key thing here is this downward trend line, this dashed line over here. For AVAX and a couple of other altcoins, they have been exhibiting this kind of lower peaks behavior. I can even move this a little bit higher just to capture the wicks. I've drawn this line way too far. So if this time round, when we have the buying climax eventually, this thing over here, the best is for this to show up at least touching the blue key level of $54.05, much like what happened back in December last year. Because that means the long-term speculative or investment value of AVAX remains same as last year. It hasn't declined. However, if it follows this trend line and show us a peak at a level around the top edge of the long-term playground zone, meaning for 3 consecutive peaks it has been declining at a rate of roughly 15% every time. So that's not a good sign. And because we're further down the timeline this time, if it really falls below the white line or somewhere around this spot, assuming it pops to the peak in the next 2 to 3 weeks, that decline I believe will be higher. Yeah, that's almost 20% decline from the last peak back in December 2024. So that's not something we want to see. So just to recap here, we want the peak to hit this blue line instead of stopping. This is not the preferred, no, not this. This is the green scenario. That's a good thing we want to see. This is something we don't want to see. So do not stop right at the white line. So clear about these 2 scenarios. So even if you're celebrating when we see the next climax comes, be sure to observe whether it's ending towards somewhere around $54. So enough big picture. Let's get to the daily and see what's going on in the smaller time frame. Here, after the squeeze back in late July, well, actually it happened sometime around late July, mid-August, sometime around here, let's say mid-August, and into all the way exactly a month to September 9th. That full month of squeeze led us to this upthrust, and then now the swings, basically the force is dying down. So we've got a bigger swing and then halved, and then we've got smaller swing afterwards. So that's the post-squeeze stage we're in at the moment. Looking at the volume themselves, this one was pretty, well, basically the highest across the entire month also. Um, there was very significant selling once the price hits the ceiling of this uptrend. I just want to adjust this a little just to make sure we capture all the wicks entirely. Yeah, that should be about right. And this, both hitting the ceiling and also closing below the green key level of $33.90 is, I'll say, a pretty strong signal that is a difficult level to go through in the near term, because subsequently we've got continuous selling until to the point where the price got below the yellow key level of $29.30, and then eventually almost touching the white line, and just to bounce back to closer to the yellow key level. So it has to get to very close to the bottom of the upward channel to get that sort of support. A lot of people buying in, supporting the price, and then eventually we've got decreased volume until this point 2 days ago, where we see more buying that pushes the price to back to this above the center line of the upward channel. But then today we see this kind of price drop, though the volume isn't as high, so that's I'll say a tiny positive sign that that's for the bulls team. And currently, as long as it stays above this yellow key level, the tendency of the trade bouncing between the yellow key level and this dashed line remains of high possibility. So when we talk about the weekly, we mentioned about this should continue with the uptrend, basically higher possibility, but then there's still a chance for the price to come back to retest these levels if basically the tests of demand have shown there just isn't sufficient support from the community or the market for AVAX. What does that mean? What does that imply if it really comes back down? Over here, it's basically showing us potentially there was a mini distribution cycle that happened. So instead of a PSY over here, what we're seeing now here is a buying climax. That's not something we hope to see, because I already mentioned it from the very beginning. This point is even lower than, way lower than the trend line. But I've seen charts that happen that way, but not this cycle. It's around 2 cycles before the current one. So for this, if it really comes back down to the orange key level, that means this distribution in the daily chart is over, and it may accumulate around the orange key level just to start another distribution cycle upwards if the weekly cycle hasn't completed its distribution. So for now, this even though it may follow the weekly chart staying at a higher possibility, just to be careful, this price swing may bring the price down to the bottom edge of the channel box, and may even test the white line or the orange line eventually. It all depends on how the market in general is behaving after seeing this tall volume bar over here when the price hits the channel top. So ideally, you will, if you're bullish, you want to see the price bounces back and challenge the green key level and eventually the ceiling of the channel box. Having said that, it's time to extend this so it reaches somewhere above the light blue key level of around $39.30, 80 cents. So that's how it's trending up at the moment. but still trading somewhere around the center line. So don't be surprised it trades sideways along this yellow line above the yellow key level, and then bounces off from the bottom edge of the upward channel box, and then eventually, well, it shouldn't be a straight line. I've drawn this too straight, so it can do this kind of motion and then eventually edges up to the ceiling of the channel box. So let's move this across here. But then this $39.80 is not an easy level to break above. And then obviously this trend line is the second boss the bulls have to fight in order to show long-term investment value for AVAX. So thanks for joining me today for AVAX. I'll move on to the next session. See you over there. Cheers.